Good morning, everyone. I'm Nicole Hennessy. I'm Vice President of Music Biz. Even though my name on the screen says Erin Tacchini, I'm not always the most tech savvy. But welcome to the Music Biz Passport. This is our platform to learn from and connect with music communities around the globe. We're excited to have Vydia here to present our presentation today. But before that, just a few opening remarks. For past Music Biz webinar recordings from the Nordics and the Latin music markets, you can visit musicbiz.org. There, you're also able to register for our upcoming Passport events. Those will focus on the WANA and South Asian regions. And talking about upcoming events, I'd be remiss if I did not talk about Music Biz 2025, our annual conference. I'm in Atlanta right now. We are moving to Atlanta this year after 10 years in Nashville, moving the conference to Atlanta for 2025. So we're here right now on a planning trip. Very exciting to start having conversations about the look and the feel and the conversations that are going to be had at the conference. We will be here May 12th through the 15th. Registration and hotel bookings are open. So please visit musicbiz2025.com for that information. Coming out on October 1st will be our call for presentations. The Music Biz annual conference program is crowdsourced. We ask the industry at large to submit ideas on what they would like to present, panels or presentations, fleshed out ideas on different topics of interest to them and to others within the industry. And then we pull from those the best to put together the Music Biz program. That comes out October 1st, so be on the lookout for that. It's really your chance to showcase your company's expertise. So without further ado, let me just point out a couple features on your screen. You have a chat box and a Q&A box. Your chat box is for you to say hello to other attendees here on the webinar with us today. Your Q&A box is for you to put questions that you would like the panelists to answer. So they're not going to be looking through the chat. They're going to be looking through the Q&A box for your questions at the end of this presentation. So without further ado, I'm going to turn over the microphone to Junior and his esteemed panelist. I want to thank Vydia for putting together this great presentation today. Junior, thank you so much. And thank you all for coming to Afrobeats, the blueprint for music globalization.
Thank you so much, Nicole. What's going on, everybody? As Nicole just mentioned, I'm Junior Saba. I'm a senior label and artist relations manager over at Vydia. Pretty much responsible for signing our artists, label clients, such as Afrobeats or Maven Records, who housed Rema, Ira Star, or Empower, who housed Mr. Easy, and so on. Yeah, that's who I am. Welcome to Afrobeats, the blueprint for music globalization. During this panel, we'll be discussing Afrobeats and its ability to transcend borders while maintaining the authenticity in this world. As we all know, Afrobeats has become one of the fastest growing genres in the world, being responsible for some of the decade's biggest hits and artists such as a Burna Boy, a Wizkid, a Vevo, a Thames, and the list goes on and on. And the power, the power that the genre has to resonate with audiences worldwide. So myself and my esteemed panelists will be discussing this dynamic relationship between Afrobeats and creative globalization. We'll be showcasing the importance of collaboration and technology as a template for lasting influence. And with that being said, hand the mic over to my panelists. You're on mute.
Hi, sorry, I'm Jheanelle Morgan. I am a program director across multiple genres at SiriusXM, including Bob Marley's Tough Beats, where I music and content to bring African music to our audience. I'm so excited to be a part of this conversation today.
Hey everyone, I'm Jodeci. I'm a senior music and talent manager at Vevo UK. So Vevo is the world's leading music video network. My role includes looking after our external partners, label relations, overseeing video deliveries, communicating editorial support, and working across Vevo's original content offerings as well.
Hey everyone, my name's Shay Royale. I am a director at Wasserman Music in the United States. I cover both Afro music and hip hop, but I lead Afro music here at Wasserman Music.
Thank you, Jheanelle, Jodeci, and Shay. I'm excited to get into this conversation. I know it's a lot to discuss. We have about an hour on the clock, so let's just jump straight into it. So as we know, obviously Afrobeats, where it's at today, has obviously developed a lot, right? So I wanted to ask you guys, how has advancements in technology, such as digital distribution, social media, and music streaming services, accelerated the reach of Afrobeats to where it is today? You guys could just jump in.
Jodeci, you want to jump in, or Jheanelle, y'all want to start first?
I'll kick it off. I think like the advancements in technology has actually been like a real plus for artists. Like the rise of platforms and social media has actually supported the discovery of emerging artists, but also aided like more established artists and extending their global reach. So going online, you can kind of see how a track can be like super viral on a social media platform, but then that engagement then transcends onto visual and streaming services. I mean, last year we saw it with Tyler's Water and Davido's Unavailable, where they had like a trending moment, but that trending moment led to huge traffic on their visuals. So like on the Vevo network, they collectively brought in like 177 million global views alone last year, which kind of just shows how technology and apps can really help to support and create that global moment as well.
I agree. I think to add to that point, for SiriusXM and Pandora, it's been easier to access Afrobeats on our platforms, even with, as she mentioned, Water and Unavailable. When those songs trend and they, the streams go up, then they get added to radio, and then they get added to pop radio, to urban radio, to even adult contemporary channels. And then from there, that cross promotion directs listeners back to my channel, Tough Beats, to hear the other artists within the genre. So I think it has definitely increased listenership on our platform and across other platforms as well.
I was gonna say, I mean, I'd piggyback on what the lady said. Everything's correct. I think it's been amazing to see how DSPs as a whole and platforms have supported and made an intentional effort to really help expand the space in Africa. I think we all understand that streaming isn't as strong locally there as it is globally and everywhere else. And I think what that's done is it's left the doors open for DSPs and other platforms to have to find an authentic entry point to support the area, right? You got to be a lot more creative. And you see platforms like Spotify, really, really do a heavy job in like making sure that everyone's engaged and they're creating new experiences for the listener group out there.
Right. I think all valid points. And, for me, I also think, because I think Jodeci also mentioned social media and whatnot, right? In general, just music globally, right, people have easier access to it, right? Whether it's the streaming platforms or whether it's it's a TikTok for artists like an Ajax to drop a record and for it to to reach outside of Africa, right, where he doesn't necessarily have a fan base outside the continent, right? So with that being said, although technology is it's definitely opening a lot of doors, I do think there's a lot of issues African artists face in regards to being able to reach a global market as well. So that leads me to my next question. What are some of the unique challenges Afrobeat artists face in terms of market access, representation, and industry support on a global scale?
I think in a key market like the US, Afrobeats has to compete with hip hop, pop, even Latin music, right? So although Afrobeats has a surge in popularity, it's maintaining consistent airplay is an issue that a lot of these artists will face. Like we can even look at Rema, for example. even though he had that success, massive success with Calm Down, he still faced challenges in the follow-up promotion of his album, right? So it's always a balancing act, and we always have to continuously teach our audience, you know, about Afrobeats and
What could
stuff.
some of those challenges that you feel as though he faced after Calm Down?
Say that one more time.
I was gonna ask you if you could dive into some of those challenges that you were referring to, you know, that Rema faced as a, you know, as an artist.
I think because Afrobeats, because Afrobeats is still a growing genre, he still has to compete with the Taylor Swift, the Drakes, you know, all of those people who automatically get added to these mainstream platforms. But it's not until, you know, Rema has another record that went viral and is reaching a different audience than, you know, the regular listeners for Afrobeats, that then pop stations will be like, oh, let's add this one. It happened to Tyla. It happened, you know, to Burna Boy as well. Like, it's not until, you know, their songs reach this massive state of virality that they get added to mainstream. So that's one of the challenges that these artists face.
I'm going to jump right in behind you, Jheanelle, and, you know, and say, again, piggybacking with you, because everything you're saying is facts, right? I think one of the challenges I saw with Rema is that the song is bigger than the artist. And I think what happens in our community and in this genre group is we see a lot of the fundamental steps being skipped, right? We've talked about this internally as panelists, you know, and we could talk about it here on screen too. I think it's important to recognize that Afro music was the only genre that grew when independent music was already a thing, right? R&B, country, rock, rap, you know, electronic music all had fundamental starts. Whether we thought 360 deals were good or not, they created a discipline, right? It's the same way people think about college, whether you like it or not, it creates a discipline. And I think there was a discipline that we failed to see within the space because everyone came in and started doing DIY businesses, right? Around it, around marketing, around streaming, around engagement, right? And so as we see a genre that has so much potential, we have to, I'm a huge fan of saying, don't learn from your mistakes, learn from other people's mistakes, right? And not to say, and when I say this, I'm not saying the Latin genre started with so many mistakes, but the Latin genre was the new frontier before Afrobeats came in, right? Or Afro music came in, as I like to say, because it was that one space where you knew there was community, you knew there was a lot of momentum coming around it, but had the businesses and the structure around the genre been developed enough, right? So, you know, again, I think Maven's an engine. Shout out to Don Jazzy and Tega, Toby, Ego, and everyone on that team. And, you know, The Plug, right? There's a lot of teams, you know, Don Juan and Wale, right? We see a lot of these teams calling them ACA in South Africa, you know, right? So we see a lot of teams that are built by these fundamentalist in terms of executives, right? That were part of, you know, the early stages of Afro music when Sony was early in and, you know, before everyone else started doing distribution deals all over the place, right? And we see the difference in how they succeed, right? If you think about the artists that have found success, they're all with traditional labels. You know, Davido, Ira Star, Rema, Burner, Omale, Young John, right? Tyler, right? They're all with Spinall. I mean, we can go down the list. You know, they're you know, you have your anomalies and your unique moment, your unique instances like the Ashakez, right? And you know, the Fireboys and them that kind of have that independent licensing space, right? That works for them. But I think when you look at Rema and you look at how we still needed someone to co-sign us to live in the space in a place where some people still can't recognize us as artists. You know what I mean? Right. So I think there's like, we just gotta hone in, you know what I mean? We gotta hone in and be students of the game every single time. But not to, again, no knock to Rema. I think, you know, Calm Down broke a lot of things. I think Fall did the same thing from Davido. I think Afrobeats' Joanna, you know what I mean? Shout out to Loja and Mona Lisa, right? Like, you know, a lot of these records really showed us what things were, and Burner took the lantern at that time and really stood for the continent in a sense, right? Which kind of was a driving force to a lot of new things. So I think that, you know, we got to take the good with the bad, right? And realize that in order to maintain and to build the economy around Afro music, we got to think about it and work around it differently. You know what I mean? And that means being supported with real systems.
No, 1,000%. I definitely agree. And I feel like just in general, right? Even the presence that, you know, the labels or the DSPs have within the continent isn't as much as you think it would be, right? For example, Spotify just came to, you know, to Nigeria, right? A place that houses 220 million people, right? And all of those people don't even have access to proper technology, you know, or devices to even stream the music, right? So even when you look at it from that point of view, it doesn't properly represent the amount of people that are actually listening to the artists from, from the continent's music, right? So I think just in general, or even the access, right? When an artist does something out there, they have to get found outside of there for the most part, or connect to somebody that has access to somebody overseas in order for them to get an opportunity, right? So I think those are certain things that, you know, as a community, because you know, one thing I specifically focus on is the B2B aspect of the business, right? That's why I personally would rather partner with the businesses out there and empower them so they have the ability to grow and scale the genre, because those people on ground are the ones finding the talent, right? To be completely honest, a lot of the times it's not the major labels, but they end up getting signed to those major labels, right? So it's like, you know, I think there are definitely, you know, certain things that, you know, that are pulling us back a bit, because you can't have global superstars like, again, we keep saying the same names, the Burner, the Vevo, the Rema, you know, who reach hundreds and millions of people, but, you know, they have to travel overseas in order to actually get that level of success, right? So it's definitely something that, you know, I think those are challenges that we face, but, you know, I think every year that goes by, we're getting a bit better. But I'll let you go in, Jodeci.
Yeah, no, I think you guys have made some really great points. I think like accessibility and opportunity are some of like the top kind of major challenges that artists within this space specifically like find. Like for example, in the UK, like we've had like Burna Boy, who's actually like broken records, like arena records in Europe, selling out huge concerts and arenas. But again, it's only in the last couple of like year or so that we started to see this being reflected in the live festival spaces as well. So when it comes to headline opportunities at the major festivals, so whether it's Glastonbury, I mean, Wizkid doesn't count as an Afrobeats artist through his own word and through his own choice, but he was the first African music act that was at Glastonbury headlining last year. And it was only this year that Burna Boy and Iris Star were the first Afrobeats artists to perform. So again, I feel like in all the years that we've seen Glastonbury, it's a huge festival. Like, where are these artists being represented when they are doing these high numbers, when they are selling out these huge arenas? Like, do they have those opportunities to perform in those spaces as well? I do think there is like some small shifts that are taking place. Like, I think it was this year that the Grammys announced the best like African music act category that has never existed before. Again, you know, it should have been existing, but again, it's those small shifts that I think still needs to happen, because there's a lot of work that still needs to be done on how African and Afrobeats artists are still represented within that wider industry as well.
I would even add to that to say, even with the Grammys adding that African category, MTV Awards added, you know, just the other day, they added the best Afrobeats, but gave it to Tyla, which became a huge issue because she's an Amapiano artist. But the problem is that because everything coming from Africa to this market or to the US market is going to be lumped in as Afrobeats, because we as the industry need to educate people and educate the audience to say, no, this is Amapiano, this is Afrobeats. And some people, as I saw Thames in an interview the other day, defining where Afrobeats came from. And I feel like that's the sort of things that they have to do as artists to, you know, promote their own genre and also just promote their own culture. Because for you to be in an interview and someone is saying, oh, I didn't know, I thought Afrobeats was just African, you know, like, I don't know how else, you know, you could educate people, but to hear it from the artists themselves. And I know like Wizkid and Burna Boy have said like, oh, we're not Afrobeats artists. Then you have to go further into educating why you're not Afrobeats, or, you know, like you can't just come out and be like, well, Afrobeat, I'm not about that. You know, it has to go deeper than that.
And it's funny you say that, right? Because at Wasserman, we don't use the term Afro beats. We use Afro music. And that was one thing. You know, I'll shout out Wasserman Music, Lee Anderson and Joe Rosenberg, and Casey Wasserman over there. We were like super intentional about how we were like defining the division, because we didn't want to come in uneducated, right? We didn't want to sound like we didn't know anything, right? And Wasserman was super. I mean, they had early on had worked with Mr. Easy prior to my time there, so it wasn't like they didn't understand, you know, the space and how to, you know, include touring and live in that space, right? But it was super important that in this new phase where things were going, we were setting a foundation for the next 3 to 4 years, which is what I tell most artists, you know, that I work with, right? So Afro music is what we should be calling it, right? Because it all comes from the continent, right? Afro beats is a West African derived sound. You know what I mean? You think of Amapiano, it's Afro tech and all those things that come from South Africa, right? Down to some of these other genres. Afro beats, right? Is, you know, you're thinking about Fela and you think, you know, right? There's so much more culture to it and the sound. And then you think of Fuji and, you know what I mean? You know, like Afro soul and Afro fusion, right?
You get into it.
You know, so there's a lot of different spaces to it. And I know we're going, that's why I said I know we're going to it. That's why I want to say enough about the touring side too. Junior,
Right.
we're gonna get to it. But again, I think Jheanelle, the real point from what you were saying is, again, people need to understand that the economy around the genre is not there. There is no capacity to have subgenres per se. Nobody cares. You know what I mean? They're not done consuming this oversaturated space that we live in now. So I think it's super important that we like really take a look at it and pay attention to what it means as not just the artists, the executives, and creators, but you, the consumers. You know what I mean? Are you buying tickets? Are you streaming? Are you buying music? Are you buying merch? Are you following? Are you engaging? Are you understanding where culture is shifting to from a digital standpoint and realizing the helium balloon effect, right? Where you have these artists that you look up to, but you're pulling them back, right? You want to see them soar, but you're pulling them back by not actually doing the activities that help them soar. You know what I mean? It's like a contradiction to the support you want to offer, right? So, I mean, we sit in these seats, so we see how much we want to see these artists have more fans and do more and more and more. But again, Jheanelle, to your point, it's re-educating, stepping back, being students of the game, and really understanding how to show up.
No, 1000%. You know, I think we all kind of fully agree on that. You know, so one thing I also wanted to talk about too, obviously, you know, I think Afrobeat, people are super familiar with the music, but I don't think it gets enough attention on the visuals, right? The music videos. So that leads me to my next questions. We know music videos are obviously a powerful tool. You know, it's an interesting topic, right? Because I feel like nowadays some people, you know, music videos ain't nothing, and some people still feel as though music videos are powerful. End of the day, I think we all agree that visuals are important in order to, you know, for you to actually, you know, get your music out there. So my question is, how have Afrobeat artists used music videos to enhance their global visibility? What visual and stylistic elements are commonly used, and how do these contribute to the genre's international success? Jodeci, I'll let you take that one first.
Felt like that one's come to me. I think like music videos are like a key asset that tells the artist story. I think they're like a great way to kind of capture new eyes, but also kind of deepen the artist fan connection that already exists. So like all artists can kind of like use that as a tool to like actually stamp parts of their story or their identity through visuals. So it's a great way to kind of enhance a moment around a global collaboration, which we've seen iconically done by like Fireboy DML and Ed Sheeran when it came to like visuals like Peru in the video where like Fireboy's texting Ed, he's in town. And those kind of, again, that collaboration, knowing that it's a UK collaboration and that kind of crossover, it kind of taps into that audience and sustains that collaboration as actually happening. So Peru actually attained over 221 million views in 2022. But we've also seen it recently with a Shay and Central C for the video for Wave, where Central C is picked up at the airport and then kind of like Shay takes him through town. And you see loads of like local shots of like the scenes of him around. And like, I feel like these visuals are just a great way for like artists to be introduced to new audiences, like to actually stamp on that collaboration that's happening. I think in our data as well, we typically find that once an artist releases a new video, there's like a 15% uplift that happens on their channel after a release. So again, like when you have that moment, you've done a huge visual to kind of support that cross-genre collaboration. It then allows the like new audiences to come in and actually tap into your wider catalog as well, which is always a great thing. So I think visions are, you know, they are very instrumental in how you kind of lock in your campaign and how you can kind of really pull together a global moment as well.
I want to add to that too. I think in addition to supporting the artists, I think it supports the African countries as well, because I think music videos have reshaped global perceptions of Africa. Like for many, including myself, early exposure to Africa came through those charity infomercials focused on poverty and hunger. And so Afrobeats music videos and Amapiano music videos present like this vibrant and diverse narrative of African culture and landscapes and people. So I don't only think it helps the artists themselves, it helps tourism in those countries too. How many people are going to Ghana and other parts of Africa now because of these music videos? Because you're seeing, oh, it doesn't look like that. It looks, you know, so you want to go actually visit these countries and see what the culture is all about.
I was gonna, like, it's funny, and Jodeci, no knock to Vevo, because I know y'all and YouTube have like an interesting relationship, right? But I'm definitely gonna shout out YouTube here when we have this kind of conversation, mainly because a lot of my exposure is to the YouTube team. So shout out Tuma and the Black music team, Brittany, Rachel, Adam, and them over on that side. I've learned a lot about not just the importance of having the visuals, but the importance of the platforms, right? And being in the live side, I didn't even know you could sell tickets through your videos and on those platforms, right? So I think starting out with visuals and giving artists an opportunity to tell their stories in a way that resonates with people that they can see, feel, hear, touch in a sense, right, is one thing. But I think what the platforms have with these visuals and what you can do on a new level on the digital side is a whole nother thing to consider, right? And I think a lot of people aren't fully taking advantage of it, right? So when I think about, you know, how powerful it is, it's like, there's so many parallels to how you can use it, right? And we've changed the way visuals work. Music videos having one stagnant or having one static video or image or whatever the case doesn't have as much impact as it used to. You see Instagram transitioning to reels and things like that, right? So when you start thinking about your short form, medium form, or long form content, right, this is when you really start doubling down on a better strategy. So I think it's increased the creativity of the genre, right? Because now you can't just throw out a cool little funny video. Now you want to do a little dance and get TikTok cranking, or now you want to make sure your IG's lit and you go on your story, right? Like people are doing so many really, really cool things. The covers, like the platforms and where visuals are taking things, and obviously where digital platforms are taking things, have changed the way we think about everything, right? So if you're not being ahead of the curve, you're missing out. So I think there's been a huge impact to it, right? So going back to what Jheanelle and Jodeci were saying, like, think about some of the unique experiences you've gotten from either these live streams that aren't things that were pre-recorded, right? Versus the things that are pre-recorded. There's so much impact. Like, I think Burner was the most recent Afro music artist, right? Or artist from Africa. I'm like looking at the chat and I'm hearing everybody going back and forth about Afrobeats versus Afro music. We know Tyler's not Afrobeats. Jheanelle said it earlier. We locked in. We get y'all. But you know, Burner was able to get on the stage and really like deliver a live stream that that from my understanding was something he gave to the people. You know what I mean? And that was only able to happen because there was a platform that wanted to support visuals where he was already at, right? So, you know, it's just a revolving door that we continue to take advantage of.
And you know, I also have a very strong opinion on just number one music videos in general, but Afrobeat music videos, because one thing I think, because people love the music just because it feels good, right? They might not understand what they're saying. For example, majority of, you know, a lot of the Afrobeats music is you know, it's being sung or rapped in Yoruba, right? The majority of the continent does not understand a lick of Yoruba. You get what I'm saying? So it's just it's the way the music makes you feel. So I think when it comes to the visuals, that it helps people to visualize what's happening, right? Because I also manage a director by the name of TG. Shout out to TG Amori. You know, that's something I know he does really well. He tells the story with his music video. So Afrobeat artists, because like Shay just said, they don't have the ability to just kind of have a stagnant or regular boring music video. You have to go above and beyond to tell a story within the music video, right? And we've seen him. He's done it for, you know, the Vito's Feel, right? Where it's telling a story about you know, a woman in a some type of camp, right? But again, it's telling the story. It's making you understand the music a little bit better because you technically might not understand the words, right? So I think we as a community as well need to highlight our visuals and what our visuals actually mean, right? I don't think we're doing enough of that. I think, you know, we're highlighting the music and we're pushing the music out there, but you know, T.G. Amori, as famous as he is, you know, locally within Nigeria and the continent of Africa, I think there needs to be more awareness spread, you know, globally, right? To kind of show we're trying to push boundaries with these music videos, right? We're building sets, you know, and I think Jodeci or Jheanelle, one of you said it, it's like it's also showing the rest of the world, nah, it's actually beautiful out there, right? Because I also think it's a lot of culture embedded in those videos. So yeah, I think you know we're all saying the same thing. Videos are super important, and I definitely think but I definitely feel as though we need to figure out creative ways to highlight it a lot more. But with that being said, I know we kind of touched on this a little bit, and we just kind of touched on it, touched on it just now in regards to how content in general and short form content and things like that, you know, are helping make a way for the genre. So my next question is, what emerging trends do you foresee in the evolution of Afrobeats? Are there any new subgenres, rising stars, or innovative approaches within the genre that you believe will help shape its future on a global stage? And I'll let anybody go for it.
Y'all want me to jump in on
Yeah.
this? I think y'all know the theme for me. It's gonna always be about the building blocks, right? And not skipping steps. And I feel like we would be skipping steps to think that subgenres would be as relevant as they need to be right now, right? Which is why this is more of a future leaning, question. But it really starts with building the foundation to start to get people to recognize the diversity of the sounds coming from the continent. You know what I mean? It's the little things like making sure that we're using the right names around the genre. But once we can get through that phase, then we can start looking at some of these things that I think the world would love to see, right? The Afro rave that people are wondering what's Rema doing, right? The Afro depression that you see with Omale, right? Afro fusion, which is more of a UK European sound, right? Because of the Africans and the Caribbeans that were kind of in the same spaces, right? So you hear that lingo a lot that we heard from Burner early on, where it's like, is he Jamaican? Is he Nigerian? Right? You think of Afro soul, you think of Afro R&B. You look at people like Thames, right? Who's done something extremely dynamic by existing within the R&B space, but still making it African. You know what I mean? You got your Afro hip hop, right? From your old school guys like the Fresh L's and the Sound Sultans. I said Fresh L's an old school guy, but for the Gen Z kids, the all tech kids, the easy moving and stuff, the Lottie Pose, but going even before that with the Sound Sultans and the Yoruba rappers, Tony Tetuila, and you know what I mean? Like we could go in, right? And then you think new age, you think of the Shali in a sense, but really Odumodu that's really taking that wave. And then you look at, artists like Blackie, down in South Africa, or his name from Tanzania, Mario from Tanzania, right? Like there's so many different like spaces to it, right? The Afro tech that we talk about, we see what Kabza and Mafarisa have done with I'm a Piano. We see where that new Afro pop sound is going now with what Tyla's doing. You know what I mean? Where she's giving us a blend and a fusion of things too. So I think there's a lot of different spaces within Afro music, and I'm sure the crowd probably has their own, if you're from a different country, you have a different sound that you hear from there. But I think the more that we can kind of start from the top and stay as a, remember the larger community, build the community first, then allow the community to actually narrow down in each sector, the easier it will be to digest. You know what I mean? Because to Jheanelle's point, or I don't know if it was Jodeci that said that, but it's like, if people like Wiz, and Wiz, I love you, and Burner, and I represent David, so me and David have these conversations as well. Like, if you all come in and say I'm not Afrobeats, then you're confusing the whole culture, because One Dance was Drake's biggest record and it was a huge stamp for us. What is fall? So shout out to producers early on, like SARS, that made sure we understood, right? So it's like, and I want to make sure I'm gonna say this on behalf of Wiz. Wiz started out as Afrobeats, he transitioned, which I think he earned the right to do, which a lot of artists, I think, again, as consumers, we need to be accepting of that. But again, to the point, when you're sitting at that high of a, stage and you're speaking on a genre that's in its infant stage, where every opinion matters, it is important to make sure that you're impeccable with your word. You know what I'm saying? So that's my long-winded convo on it. I don't know what y'all wanted to say.
I totally agree with that. And to add to that, for SiriusXM, I'm constantly educating people. We have a predominantly white audience. So for me, it's always, hey, this is what Afrobeats is. When we were building Bob Marley's Tough Beats, it was a challenge. I have to say that. But for Burna Boy and Wizkid to come in and kind of denounce Afrobeats, then it causes more problems for people within the industry trying to create that space or, create that platform for other artists who consider themselves Afrobeats. Because when, our audience think of Afrobeats, they think of Burna Boy, Wizkid, Rema, Davido, and now Tems and Tyla. So those are the people who represent the genre for our audience right now. So if they come out and they're like, we're not Afrobeats, then it's like, all right, well, where can I hear your music? You know what I mean? So I think it's definitely, as you said, Shay, like not necessarily using their platform to denounce or, for lack of a better term, shit on Afrobeats, but to use it to uplift other artists. Like you could say, oh, I just want to do hip hop now, but I'm looking at these other Afrobeats artists coming up, or I've seen other artists like in hip hop and R&B transition to other genres, and they're not saying, oh, I'm not doing hip hop no more or whatever. They're just saying, I'm just doing this right now. Andre 3000 is a great example of that. He's doing jazz, which is cool. Everybody is accepting of it. So it's not that, we don't want artists to grow. It's more so saying, you're transitioning, not just saying whatever. But another thing that I see happening in the space is more collaborations, more international collaborations. We've seen Ira Star collaborating with a bunch of R&B artists on her recent album. Yeah. I think Rema recently collaborated with Black. So I think a lot more international collaborations will be a thing for the Afrobeats market. Not only does it help bring a different sound to the genre, but it also helps to bring new audiences to the genre, because you're just like, the Fireboy and the Drake and the Beyoncés, they brought different ears to Afrobeats, and I think it'll continue to do the same.
Right, right. Go ahead, Jodeci.
No, I completely agree. I think like I predict that we're gonna see more like cross-genre collaborations, because there's been so many success stories where they performed really, really well. Again, I think earlier on in the chat, we talked about Rema and Selena Gomez, and like Calm Down, even in our own network, was like the top performing Afrobeats video for 2023. So again, I feel like there is that real appetite for people to engage with new sounds and new genres as well. So I do think we are going to see like more of that. I also feel like in the Amapiano space as well, that like platforms like TikTok and stuff, I hope that we see that trajectory, because TikTok has been such a great kind of social media platform for that sound, specifically when it comes to dance trends and like viral routines. So I predict that will continue to grow as well. Also in terms of like rising stars, like Shay, you mentioned like a few incredible artists that we work with. But even over the last year, a part of our Discover series, which is aimed at like the emerging kind of breakthrough artists, you know, we've been fortunate enough to work with Udamudu Black, and we've also worked with Shally Poppy and Tyler and Ruga earlier on as well. And all of those artists are part of our Discover series. They also have like an introducing piece as well, where they sit down and kind of break into what inspires them, a little bit into their story, to give insight into the fans, into the audiences as well. And I feel like, again, those artists are really kind of at the forefront of pushing new sound, but also showing the world what their genre and their market is all about as well.
Got it. Got it. Got it. No, yeah, I think, you know, you guys have said very insightful things. Just wanted to point, we got about 7-8 minutes until we jump into the Q&A. We got about 2 questions left. So I'm just getting to next one. So as Afrobeats gains global recognition, how can artists and industry stakeholders ensure that the genre's cultural heritage is preserved? What measures can be taken to maintain the genre's authenticity while embracing global opportunities? I think we all kind of touched on this a little bit before, but, you know, I definitely want us to kind of dive in a little bit, you know, on how, because, you know, I think just in general, I think people feel as though, you know, some of these global collaborations and whatnot are actually hurting Afrobeat artists, right? And I don't necessarily feel like that, but, you know, you might some of our people might consider somebody else a sellout for working with this person, or, you know, for trying to go too big too quick. You know, is that a thing? Going too big too quick, going on a, you know, so things like that, you know, obviously impact how culturally how people look at it, right? So what do you guys think can be done to maintain the authenticity within the genre?
I'm gonna kick it off with this. To hire and we need to see more people like us in those spaces.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think, not to say or discredit, you know, any other race working in the space, but I think we got to remember Black music got to be Black music sometimes, and the best people to promote and push Black music are Black people. And again, I'm not against anyone else working within the space or anyone else representing the space, but I think there's a sense of authenticity that comes with being able to understand and represent something that you fully believe in. You know what I mean? And I think the other half to that is us as a community wanting to do it. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? Like, you know, I hear a lot of people talking about, like, I wish I could do this. I wish I could curate playlists. I wish I could run this and run that, you know, but people want the glorified roles when there's so many like positions and roles within this economy that can really help us get there. We need more production people. We need more people that can do tour management. We need more assistants. We need more visual artists. We need people from the highest and lowest level. So I think, again, but we need people that actually understand the art and really want to push the art in an authentic way. And I was gonna say the other half of that is gonna always be what I said with this, the fundamental side of it. You know, sometimes you got to strip all the pretty glitter and take it back to the basics. You know what I mean? And I feel like a lot of people tend to forget, though, the artists and the parts of the genre that had to run so everyone else could, I mean, had to walk so everyone else could run. You know what I mean? Like there's so many of those steps that I think are being skipped right now that if you fly too far out, you forget where you've come from. You know what I mean? So when we talk about, you know, preservation and cross collaboration and things like that, it's like, are we still doing it for the right reasons? You know what I mean? Especially we have records that are cross collaborating that are still bigger than the artist, where the artist's messages aren't being told. You know what I mean? When I think about all these interviews where people are like, yo, Afro beats or Afro music, they don't really talk about nothing. Like I've heard that so many times, and it's like, how can you say that when you don't even understand the language? You don't know what they're talking about. You know what I mean? Like, we all loved Last, but the man was talking about a breakup.
Mm-hmm.
And if it wasn't that he was with Steph, would anyone have really cared? You know what I mean? Like, so again, it's like, so shout out to platforms like Genius that, have focused on, getting the lyrics out, and all the DSPs that demand from you artists to give us the lyrics and to translate, you know what I mean? That's how we continue to maintain a sense of truth with the music and with the space that we're growing in my opinion.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think education and contextualization is definitely important for the genre. At SiriusXM and Pandora, we curate content where we allow the artists to dive deeper into, their music, where they're from. One of our key programs for Bob Marley's Tough Beats is the Tough Beats Takeover, where we include in-depth interviews with the artists where they talk about how they got started, the stories behind their songs, their influences, all of that stuff. And even earlier this year, we partnered with Pandora and Empire to try something new with Benson and Ruger. They had that rivalry. And so we said, instead of doing an interview, let's have them interview each other and talk about the rivalry and talk about what they've learned from each other in doing their collaborative album, and without anyone's, input. And of course, we provided the questions, but we still ensure that the conversation remained authentic and true to their voices. And I think that's what's important for the preservation of of Afrobeats.
Jodeci?
Yeah, I think to add to that, I think from like an industry perspective, we should actually just create spaces for artists to authentically tell their stories. I know we touched on it earlier with WizKid, kids, of course, like if you know about Wiz, early doors, holler at your boy, like years and years ago before
Hey,
all
Jodeci.
yeah, you know what I
Word.
mean? That like he charted off, I think like he started off as an Afrobeats artist, but I think it's like a 50-50 kind of rule where it's like it's an educational thing from the inner side of the industry, as well as not it just being the artist's responsibility to always tell where they're at. I'd also say that like it's also about us as an industry and us as an audience understanding the different cultures and sounds that are coming from each of those markets as well, instead of categorizing all African artists into that Afrobeat genre. We talked about earlier where we talked about Tyler, and she had to actually go to the VMAs on a live stage to be like, yeah, just to let you guys know, I'm from South Africa. I'm a piano. I don't do Afrobeats. You know what I mean? It's those type of conversations that I hope, again, like sparks like people to actually educate themselves on the Pacific sounds. But I also feel like from an industry perspective, there was a really great partnership that I was really, really so excited to see, which was Universal actually got invested major stakes into Mavin Records. And it's those, like, obviously, if you know about Mavin Records, you know about the OG producer that is Don Jazzy. Like, it's those authentic partnerships where it's like, that is what makes it worthwhile. Like, are you actually going to invest money into those labels that are there, like finding artists on like early doors, like local talent? It's those authentic partnerships that I feel like are going to be key in the growth of how we see and support Afrobeats as it continues to develop as well.
And I think, I asked the last question, just to, get it through, but I think you touched on some very important points, Jodeci. I feel like, because one thing I specifically focus on is the B2B aspect of it, right? I don't think it's fair for the culture and the African artists to just get signed by a major label or a label that has no knowledge of what's actually happening within the culture, right? So I'd rather them partner with the businesses, out there and support the businesses, because if you scale up and lift the businesses, you're also in return scaling and developing the continent, the country, the cultures, right? So I definitely feel as though heavy representation within our industry, hiring people that are going to be in the department of for African music to also potentially be African, right? Or at least well versed in, right? So I think things like that would definitely help. I want to ask one more question. And we're gonna speed around this one just so we could get into the questions. The question is, how has international music festivals and live performances contributed to the rise of Afrobeats? Are there any particular festivals or venues that have been pivotal in boosting the genre's profile globally? I know, Shay, this is, Mr. Wasserman. You got some thoughts on this, but definitely want to give everybody a chance. If you could just kind of run through it for like 30 seconds a person, just so we could get into the questions.
I'll let the ladies go. I can clean up.
Such a gentleman, Shay. I'll just quickly just note festivals like Afro Nation. I feel like they've done an incredible job at like supporting and profiling the genre. I think they launched back in like 2019, and since then, like they've continued to grow. It started off as a festival in Europe somewhere, and now they're doing like it more regularly, and it's expanding out further. And also they were booking artists in the Afrobeat space and headlining them and putting them on the platform that they deserve to have. Also in London, I don't know if you guys are aware of a like live gig called Danky Sound. They are huge at pushing Amapiano. So I have to give them an honorary mention because I think it's in London when Amapiano started to like feed through, it was the only kind of space that I feel like really championed the sound. And it's amazing to kind of see how they're growing and spreading across Europe as well.
Thank you. Jheanelle?
I mean, Jodeci took it. Afro Nation is one of the festivals that SiriusXM has partnered with in the last 2 years, given budget. But you know, we usually amplify festival performances. We do exclusive coverage, interviews, and that's usually where we get to see these artists, you know, like we aren't in Africa, so or in Nigeria or any of the African countries. So that's usually where we get to see them and where we get to talk to them and have these authentic conversations in person and not over Zoom or anything. So I think festivals are definitely an important part of growing the genre.
Mr. Shay?
I was gonna say this is, touring is a whole thing, but shout out to Josh and Obi and them at Afro Nation, Abdul at Afro Future, Tunde, Vito and them, Asante at Jerk and Jollof, Timmy and Dami and them doing Afro Lituation, obviously Ant and the guys doing DLT, across on the globe too. I mean, there's a lot of other ones that I'm probably not thinking off the top, but I think, and then you think of Coachella, right? Who tries their best to put a major act on a large stage each and every year, right? I think the next one's going to be someone that we kind of all expect anyway, right? Who hasn't done it. So, I think there's a lot of festivals that are looking for ways to continue to put people in position. I want to make sure I do note that with that, we understand why it's that way, right? Because I know a lot of people are like, yo, how do we get more artists, this and this and that? I mean, it's to play the game, you got to understand the game, right? And a festival is still a business. So as much as they want to support you, they still have to make their bottom line, right? Which goes back to the economy. So if you're not an artist that is in a position to sell tickets, you might not make it on the festival that you want, right? So it's a catch-22 to how that works, which is why, I'd say myself and the Wasserman team, and shout out to Zach Borson at CAA and, Christian and Mike G at UTA, like there's a dedication to just making sure that we're helping people build their live resume the right way, right? Which means not jumping into larger arenas because other artists are doing it, or doing venues that are too big that you can't sell out, right? And being able to actually deliver an experience to your fans. And, as fans, you can engage in experience with these artists that you support in a way that's mutually beneficial. So I don't know. I feel like that's the best way to really talk about it, right? Like if you're an up and coming artist and you want to get on an international stage, start from the ground. Don't skip steps. You know what I mean? It'll help you last longer. You'll see yourself 10, 20 years from now getting paid for one show the same rate that some people get paid for 12 of them, right? Because you've built a fan base that matters. Ed Sheeran does multiple nights in the same venue. You know what I mean? Afro music, we're doing, MSG, Webley and O2 and all that, but these kids are in other genres where there's more people and it's still oversaturated. They're able to do multiple nights and sell out shows, so that's how the game's played.
For sure, absolutely. Again, thank you for that. Thank you, panelists. Let's, want to get into some of the questions. We have about, 4 minutes. I know we could run overtime a little bit. So, we'll just kind of get into them right now. I think if I press answer live. So one of the questions is from Tanisha Anderson. Locks. I don't know if I'm saying it right. Sorry if I butchered your name. But question is, we hear a lot about the digital growth of Afrobeat artists. Can you speak to artists that have physical product and selling trends? Will there be more physical press of the project? Good question, guys.
Sounds like a Jheanelle and Jodeci question to me.
Sorry, can you repeat the last bit of that question?
So will there be more physical press of projects, within the, the Afrobeat genre, just physical in general?
Yeah, I mean, I work more on the video side of it all. So I can't really speak to necessarily the press side of it, like the physical press side of it. Jheanelle?
I mean, neither can I. But I think everything is going so digital. Yes, physical product is important, but I think it's hard to say because, I mean, the other day I saw Burna Boy's, I think his African Giant album is now available on vinyl. That's something I would get because, vinyl right now is trending. So in that case, yes, but I don't know if we're gonna go back to like CDs and stuff like that. I really can't say that because everything is digital.
I think merchandising is probably the general thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, buy more merch. You know what I'm saying? But I do like how, Junior, you sent us this question when you're the one who works in distribution.
Thanks.
So is Vydia going to be doing digital copies? I just say
So
there's no kid announcement.
I just want I'm the moderator, y'all the panelists, so I wanted to give y'all a chance to answer. But no, I definitely feel as though, Shay, you made a good point, right? I think we all made good points. I'm not sure if we're gonna go back to the era where CDs and whatnot is gonna be what's moving the needle, because at the end of the day, we know digital is what's moving the needle, right? That's again, when we talk about expansion for the genre and whatnot, that is what, it's not selling CDs in Nigeria that's going to get an artist hot, right? So it's so yeah, but on the merch side, it's definitely something us as a company as well too are diving into, because at the end of the day, fans, that's something that's always going to be able to connect the fans, whether you're in the continent, whether you're somewhere else, right? So I definitely think that'll move the needle. Next question is from Lynn Scott. What specific infrastructure needs to be on a what specific infrastructure needs to be on a continent to allow artists to maintain an independent versus signing to a major, and where are you seeing that growth happen? Shout out to Lynn. She's the VP of label services over here at Vydia as well too. But what do you guys think?
I think I'd start out from an infrastructure standpoint. I think the disconnect with streaming is something that we're going to continue to battle with over time until something changes there. Maybe a more economical approach to streaming. Same thing with live ticketing. There is no live system in Africa. Like, touring doesn't necessarily exist. Everyone kind of just picks a market and just dives in. You know what I mean? So, what does routing really look like? Who are the promoters that are, playing? Shout out to Live Nation and their team with the new stadium and arena they built in Nigeria. So we got to do a lot more things that foster the community that we need, right? So more arenas, more economical ways to stream, because everyone's not paying that, that fee to do a membership, right? And not everyone wants to listen to ads. I think, Empire's done a great job with, independent distribution, and you see DistroKid and Vydia. I know I keep talking about your competitors, June, but what I mean? Like, an example is you. You know what I mean? Obviously, you work with Forbats, but I mean, we met because of your work within the space, along with the Amentum team and Koch and them, right? So we just need more people investing in the space and, giving house to, like, new functionalities within the space, if that makes sense, right? So you need more people that want to be creative directors. You need more people that actually want to be managers and have taken the time to do it. You need more people that want to be like Jheanelle and Jodeci, but on the continent. You know what I mean? Because it allows the continent to have its own system of economy that looks bigger when it gets out. You know what I mean? And you don't see so many local champions. you know, where you so big in Nigeria and then you get to London and you wonder why people ain't saying hi to you. You know what I mean? Because it didn't get to grow up through the proper channels. So, Lynn, I don't know if that answers your question, but I mean, we just, again, we need the basics. Like, think of everything that every other genre got early on, you know what I mean? And think about it for Afro music.
Right. Jodeci, you know, you want to go on quick, or should I
Yeah.
just go to the last question?
Yeah, I was literally going to add to that. I think, yeah, like you hit the nail on the head, Shay. I think it's so many different standpoints. It's education, it's investment. I think like working across, like working across the UK, but also working with our relationships across the Caribbean as well. As Africa, I do feel like it's an educational standpoint. Like I think the glitz and glamour of signing a major deal is not for everyone's case. It's not for everyone's situation. A lot of people are signing deals very earlier on in their career, and those deals are not made to work for them in the long instance. If they do blow up, if they do grow, if they do succeed past what a label might invest in them very early doors. So actually going out into those markets, being able to actually sit down as distributors and actually be like, okay, this is what we can offer. This is how we can help support you. This is how we can grow your platform, is a part of it, as on top of also having the financial investment, as well as having those reps and having those contacts in market to be able to connect with them and connect with the wider markets as well.
Sure. Jheanelle?
I agree with what they're both saying. I also want us to keep in mind that major labels, even in the other genres, are struggling right now, you know? So they don't even have the support to even put it in Africa. So
Well,
it's
right
hard
now.
for me to be like, oh yeah, set up the same things that we did for the other genres. Because it's just the money that we used to have just isn't there anymore. But there are basic things like I think when labels enter into any, you know, into the genre, they should act as partners and not necessarily gatekeepers of the genre. It should be, you know, giving the artist the freedom to express their culture while also having the industry support.
Facts.
1,000% agree. Jheanelle, you just dropped the mic just there. I ain't gonna lie. Should we even do one more, or it's
Nah, that
like,
was the cleanup right there,
you know,
Jheanelle.
you know, nah, for sure. Again, thank you guys for having us. Nicole, are you jumping back on? Should we give our closing remarks before?
If you guys have closing remarks, go right ahead, and then I'll wrap it up for you.
Okay, cool. Again, thank you everybody for listening. Thank you for the panelists for being here. I think we had a really good conversation. Again, I'm Junior Saba. You can find me on socials at June Saba. Yeah, feel free to hit me up. Let's talk. Jheanelle, Jodeci, Shay.
Ladies.
Hey, thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. You can follow me at Just Jheanelle on Instagram, Jheanelle A. Morgan on LinkedIn. Looking forward to talking some more.
And yeah, thank you everyone for like listening in. I hope that the conversation was insightful and was hopefully able to share some insights into like our spaces and our worlds. You can find me on social media at Jodeci Chin. You can also find out more about what Vevo does at Vevo for Artists, for any like distributors, labels, or artists that might be on the call as well.
And then, you know, thank you everyone. Great conversation. Hopefully, you know, we didn't sound like gatekeepers ourselves, you know, and we were actually sharing things that, you know, everyone feels like they can actually apply on their own. You can find me on Instagram with my alter ego, Shay Royale, on LinkedIn as Gideon Royale. And if you see any of my artists touring or doing shows, buy tickets, you know what I mean? Support the genre. You know, I rep Davido, Lil J, Kiss Daniel, Vic Tony, Bloody Civilian, Mel Vito, and Blackie and some other artists as well, Major Leagues and those guys too. So if you see, you know, any of these guys doing stuff and you want to support the genre, support the artist by buying tickets. That's what we'd appreciate.
Absolutely. You just try to drop your own mic.
Listen, quick, real quick. Let's make it make sense.
For sure. So yeah,
So Thank you guys all so very much for sharing your expertise today. Very insightful conversation. Thank you all for being here. We will be back in October with a look at the WANA region. So see you back then. Take care. Have a great day.
Everybody.